I can say honestly I have a very deep affection for him. I do. To me, he's my boy. He's with me. I often say to him, you know, I owe you a lot, and he doesn't know what I mean, but I'm going to tell him now what I mean.
The story I'm going to tell you now is not the story people want. It's the story people need, and nobody has made a video on this topic before. A few months before Mike turned 13, he got arrested again for possession of stolen property. They had exhausted all the places in the New York City vicinity to keep him, so they decided to send him to the Tryon School for Boys, an upstate New York facility for juvenile offenders about an hour northwest of Albany. Mike's mother was happy that he was going upstate. By then, a lot of grown men had started coming to the house looking for him. "Your brother is a dirty motherfucker. I'm gonna kill your brother," they'd tell Mike's sister. "He's just a kid," she'd say. "It's not like he took your wife or something." Imagine that. Grown men coming to your house looking for you, and you're 12 years old. Ain't that some shit? Can you blame Mike's mother for giving up all hope for him? The fact that they were sending Mike up to the state reformatory was not cool. Mike was with the big boys now. They were more hardcore than the guys at Spofford. But Tryon wasn't a bad place. There were a lot of cottages there, and you could walk outside, play basketball, and go to the gym. But Mike got in trouble right away. He was just angry all the time. He had a bad attitude, and he'd be confrontational, letting everyone know that he was from Brooklyn and didn't mess around with any bullshit. One day, some guy disrespected Mike, and he attacked him ferociously. They handcuffed Mike and sent him to Elmwood, a lockdown cottage for the incorrigible kids. Elmwood was creepy. They had big, tough-ass redneck staff members there. Every time you saw somebody from Elmwood, they were walking in handcuffs with two people escorting them. On weekends, all the kids from Elmwood who earned credits would go away for a few hours and then come back with broken noses, cracked teeth, busted mouths, and bruised ribs. They were all jacked up. Mike thought they were getting beat up by the staff because back then, nobody would call the health department or social services if the staff were hurting kids. But the more Mike talked to these hurt guys, the more he realized they were happy. "Yeah, man, we almost got him. We almost got him." They laughed. Mike had no idea what they were talking about until they told him. They were boxing Mr. Stewart, one of the counselors. Bobby Stewart was a tough Irish guy, around 170 pounds, who had been a professional boxer and a national amateur champ. When Mike was in the hole, staff members told him there was an ex-boxing champ teaching kids how to box. The staff members who told Mike about him were very nice, and Mike wanted to meet him because he thought he'd be nice too. One night, while Mike was in his room, there was a loud, intimidating knock on the door. He opened it, and it was Mr. Stewart. "Hey, asshole, I heard you want to talk to me," he growled. "I want to be a fighter," Mike said. "So do the rest of the guys, but they don't have the balls to work to be a fighter," he said. "Maybe if you straighten up your act, stop being such an asshole, and show some respect around here, I'll work with you."
I remember the day when Mike came, yes. I remember the first time laying eyes on him. And they brought him in handcuffs. And he found out that I was an ex-fighter. And he asked one of the staff, "How can I meet Stewart?" Finally, I went to his room one night, and I banged on his door to intimidate him. I said, "So you want to meet me? What the hell do you want?" He said, "I want to be a fighter." I said, "So do the rest of these other guys, all the rest of these other guys. They haven't got to work to be a fighter."
After that, Mike really started to apply himself. Stewart must have seen something in him he liked, because after their second session, he said to Mike, "Would you like to do this for real?" They started training regularly. After their workouts, Mike would go back to his room and shadow box all night long. He started to get a lot better. Mike didn't know it at the time, but during one of their sparring sessions, he hit Bobby with a jab, broke his nose, and almost knocked him down. Bobby took the next week off to let it heal. After a few months of workouts, Mike called his mother and put Bobby on the phone with her. Tell her, Mike said. Mike wanted him to tell her how good he was doing. Mike just wanted her to know he could do something. He figured she might believe it if a white person was telling her. But she told him she had trouble believing he had changed. She thought Mike was incorrigible. Shortly after that, Bobby came to Mike with an idea. "I want to bring you to see this legendary boxing trainer, Customato. He can take you to the next level." "What the heck is going on here?" Mike asked. Mike didn't trust anybody but Bobby Stewart at that time. Now Bobby was going to transfer him to another person? Just trust this man, Bobby told him. So one weekend in March of 1980, Bobby and Mike drove to Catskill, New York. Cuss's gym was a converted meeting hall above the town police station. There were no windows, so they had some old-fashioned lamps to provide light. Mike noticed posters on the walls and clippings of some of the local boys who were doing well. Cuss looked exactly like what you'd envision a hard-boiled boxing trainer to look like. He was short and stout with a bald head, and you could see that he was strong. He even talked tough, and he was dead serious. There wasn't a happy muscle in his face. "How you doing?" "I'm Cuss," he introduced himself. He had a strong Bronx accent and was with a younger trainer named Teddy Atlas. Bobby and Mike got in the ring and started sparring. Mike started out strong, really knocking Bobby around the ring. They usually did 3 rounds, but in the middle of the second round, Bobby hit Mike in the nose with a couple of rights, and Mike started bleeding. It didn't really hurt, but the blood was all over Mike's face. "That's enough," Atlas said. "But, sir, please let me finish this round and go one more round." "That's what we normally do," Mike pleaded. He wanted to impress Cuss. Mike guessed he actually did impress Cuss. When they got out of the ring, Cuss's first words to Bobby were, "That's the heavyweight champion of the world." Right after that sparring session, they went to Cuss's house for lunch. He lived in a big, white Victorian house on 10 acres. You could see the Hudson River from the porch. There were towering maple trees and large rose bushes on the side of the house. Mike had never seen a house like that in his life. They sat down, and Cuss told Mike he couldn't believe he was only 13 years old. Then he told him what his future would be. Cuss had seen Mike spar for not even 6 minutes, but he spoke with certainty as if it were law. "You looked splendid," he said. "You're a great fighter." It was compliment after compliment. "If you listen to me, I can make you the youngest heavyweight champion of all time." Fuck, how could he know that shit? Mike thought. He wondered if Cuss was a pervert. In the world Mike came from, people did stuff like that when they wanted to perv out on you. Mike didn't know what to say. He had never heard anyone say nice things about him before. He wanted to stay around this old guy because he liked the way Cuss made him feel. Mike would later realize that this was Cuss's psychology. Give a weak man some strength and he becomes addicted. Mike was excited on the ride back to Tryon. He was sitting with a bunch of Cuss's roses in his lap. He had never seen roses in person before, only on television. But he wanted some because they looked so exquisite. He wanted to have something nice to take back with him, so he asked if he could take some. Between the smell of the roses and Cuss's words ringing in his ears, Mike felt good, like his whole world had changed. In that one moment, Mike knew he was going to be somebody. "I think he likes you," Bobby said. "If you're not a prick and an asshole, this will go well." Mike could tell Bobby was happy for him. When Mike got back to his cottage, he put the roses in water. Cuss had given him a huge boxing encyclopedia to look at, and he didn't sleep that whole night. He just read the entire book. He read about Benny Leonard, Harry Greb, and Jack Johnson. He was hooked. He wanted to be like those guys. They looked like they had no rules. They worked hard, but during their downtime, they just lounged while people came to them like they were gods. Mike started going out to Cuss's house every weekend to work out. He'd work with Teddy in the gym, then stay over at Cuss's house. There were a few other fighters living there with Cuss and his companion, a sweet Ukrainian lady named Camille Ewald. When Mike first got to the house, he would steal money from Teddy's wallet. That shit doesn't go away just because you've got some good stuff going on. Mike had to get money for weed. He would hear Teddy tell Cuss, "It has to be him." "It's not him," Cuss said. Mike was excited about the boxing, but he became certain it was what he wanted to do with his life after watching the first Leonard Duran fight on TV at Cuss's house one weekend. That fight was thrilling. They were both so stylish and deadly, throwing punches so fast it looked choreographed like they were acting. Mike was amazed. He had never felt that feeling again. When Mike first started going to Cuss's, Cuss didn't even let him box. After his workout with Teddy, Cuss would sit down with him and they'd talk. He'd talk about feelings, emotions, and the psychology of boxing. He wanted to reach Mike at the root. They talked a lot about the spiritual aspects of the game. If you don't have the spiritual warrior in you, you'll never be a fighter. "I don't care how big or strong you are," he told Mike. They talked about abstract concepts, but Cuss was getting through to him. Cuss knew how to talk Mike's language. He had grown up in tough neighborhoods and had been a street kid too. The first thing Cuss talked about was fear and how to overcome it. Fear is the greatest obstacle to learning, but fear is your best friend. Fear is like fire. If you learn to control it, you let it work for you. If you don't learn to control it, it'll destroy you and everything around you. Like a snowball on a hill, you can pick it up and throw it or do anything you want with it before it starts rolling down. But once it rolls down and gets so big, it'll crush you to death. So one must never allow fear to develop and build up without having control over it, because if you don't, you won't be able to achieve your objective or save your life. Consider a deer crossing an open field. On approaching the forest, suddenly, instinct tells it there's danger there. Might be a mountain lion. Once this happens, nature begins its survival function. The adrenal glands inject adrenaline into the bloodstream, causing the heart to beat faster. This, in turn, enables the body to perform extraordinary feats of agility and strength. Where normally the deer can leap 15 feet, the adrenaline enables the first leap to be 40 or 50 feet, enough to escape from the present danger. The human being is no different. When confronted with a situation of fear, such as the fear of getting hurt or intimidated, adrenaline speeds up the heart. Under the influence of adrenaline, people can perform extraordinary feats of strength. You think you know the difference between a hero and a coward, Mike? Well, there is no difference between a hero and a coward in what they feel. It's what they do that makes them different. The hero and the coward feel exactly the same, but you have to have the discipline to do what a hero does and to keep yourself from doing what the coward does. Your mind is not your friend, Mike. I hope you know that. You have to fight with your mind, control it, put it in its place. You have to control your emotions. Fatigue in the ring is 90% psychological. It's just the excuse of a man who wants to quit. The night before a fight, you won't sleep. Don't worry, the other guy didn't either. You'll go to the weigh-in and he'll look much bigger than you, calmer, like ice, but he's burning up with fear inside. Your imagination is going to credit him with abilities he doesn't have. Remember, motion relieves tension. The moment the bell rings and you come into contact with each other, suddenly your opponent seems like everybody else because now your imagination has dissipated. The fight itself is the only reality that matters. You have to learn to impose your will and take control over that reality. Mike could listen to Cuss for hours, and he did. Cuss talked to him about the importance of acting intuitively, impersonally, and in a relaxed manner so as to keep all his emotions and feelings from blocking what he intuitively knew. He told Mike that he was talking about that once with the great writer Norman Mailer. Cuss, you don't know it, but you practice Zen, Mailer had told Cuss, and then he gave him a book called Zen in the Art of Archery. Cuss used to read that book to Mike. He told Mike that he had actually experienced the ultimate in emotional detachment in his first fight. He was training in a gym in the city because he wanted to be a professional fighter. He had been hitting the heavy bag for a week or two when the manager asked him if he wanted to box with someone. He got in the ring and his heart was beating like a drum. The bell rang, the other guy charged him, and he got knocked around. His nose was swollen, his eye was shut, he was bleeding. The guy asked him if he wanted to go a second round, and Cuss said he'd try. He went out there, and suddenly his mind became detached from his body. He was watching himself from afar. The punches that hit him felt like they were coming from a distance. He was more aware of them than feeling them. Cuss told Mike that to be a great fighter, you had to get out of your head. He would have Mike sit down saying, transcend, focus, relax until you see yourself looking at yourself. Tell me when you get there. That was very important for Mike. Mike was way too emotional in general. Later on, Mike realized that if he didn't separate from his feelings inside the ring, he would be sunk. He might hit a guy with a hard punch and then get scared if he didn't go down. Cuss took this out-of-body experience one step further. He would separate his mind from his body and then visualize the future. Everything gets calm, and I'm outside watching myself, he told Mike. It's me, but it's not me, as if my mind and my body aren't connected, but they are connected. Mike, get a picture in your mind of what it's going to be. You can actually see the picture like a screen. You can take a fighter who is just beginning, and you can see exactly how he will respond. When that happens, you can watch a guy fight, and you know everything there is to know about this guy. You can actually see the wheels in his head. It's as if you are that guy. You are inside him. He even claimed that he could control events using his mind. Cus trained Rocky Graziano when he was an amateur. One time, Cus was in Rocky's corner, and Rocky was taking a beating. After being knocked down twice, Rocky came back to the corner and wanted to quit. But Cus pushed him out for the next round. Before Rocky could quit, Cus used his mind to will Rocky's arm to throw a punch. It connected, and the guy went down. The ref stopped the fight. This was the heavy dude who was training Mike. Cus was a strong believer that in your mind, you had to be the entity that you wanted to be. If you wanted to be heavyweight champion of the world, you had to start living the life of a heavyweight champion. Mike was only 14, but he was a true believer in Cus's philosophy. Always training, thinking like a Roman gladiator, being in a perpetual state of war in your mind, yet on the outside seeming calm and relaxed. Cus was practicing and teaching Mike the law of attraction without even knowing it. Cus was also big on affirmations. He had a book called Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion by a French pharmacist-psychologist named Émile Coué. Coué would tell his patients to repeat to themselves, "Every day, in every way, I am getting better and better," over and over again. Cus had a bad cataract in one eye, and he would repeat that phrase, claiming it had made his eye better. Cus had Mike modify the affirmations for his own situation. So Mike was saying, "The best fighter in the world. Nobody can beat me. The best fighter in the world. Nobody can beat me," over and over again all day. Mike loved doing that. He loved hearing himself talk about himself. The goal of all these techniques was to build confidence in the fighter. Confidence was everything. But in order to possess that confidence, you had to test yourself and put yourself on the line. It doesn't come from osmosis or out of the air. It comes from consistently going over the visualization in your mind to help you develop the confidence you want to possess. Cus laid all this out for Mike in the first few weeks they were together. He gave Mike the whole plan. He gave him a mission. Mike was going to be the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. Mike didn't know it then, but after one of their first long talks, Cus confided in Camille. "Camille, this is the one I've been waiting for all my life." Mike was getting close to being paroled back to Brooklyn when Bobby Stewart came to see him one day. "I don't want you to go back to Brooklyn. I'm afraid you may do something stupid and get killed or get your ass locked up again. Do you want to move in with Cus?" Mike didn't want to go back either. He was looking for change in his life. Plus, he liked the way those people talked and made him feel good, made him feel like he was part of society. So Mike talked to his mother about staying up there with Cus. "Ma, I want to go up there and train. I want to be a fighter. I can be the best fighter in the world." Cus had Mike's mind so messed up. That's all he talked to him about, how great Mike could become, how to improve himself, day by day, in every way. All that self-help stuff. Mike's mom felt bad about him leaving, but she signed the permission papers. Maybe she thought she'd failed as a mother. So Mike moved in with Cus, Camille, and the other fighters in the house. Mike got to know more and more about Cus because they'd have these long talks after Mike trained. Cus was so happy when Mike told him his hard luck stories about his life. He would light up like a Christmas tree. "Tell me more," he'd say. Mike was the perfect guy for his mission. Broken home, unloved, destitute. Mike was hard, strong, and sneaky, but he was still a blank chalkboard. Cus wanted Mike to embrace his shortcomings. He didn't make Mike feel ashamed or inferior because of his upbringing. He loved the fact that Mike had great enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. Cus taught Mike that word. Cus could relate to him because he'd had a hard life too. His mother died at a very early age. He'd lost his vision in one eye in a street fight when he was a little kid. His father died in his arms when he was a young man. A cop had murdered his favorite brother. Cus really only worked a 9-to-5 job for 1 year in his life, and then he left because he got into fights with his coworkers. But he spent a lot of time helping out the people in his neighborhood, solving their problems almost like an unofficial social worker. He derived a lot of pleasure from assisting other people. Cus helped weed out political corruption in his neighborhood when LaGuardia was running for mayor of New York City as a reformer. He did it by standing up to one of the corrupt guys who had pulled a gun on him. He was fearless. He was also bitter. I stood up for the little guy all my life, Cuss said. A lot of my troubles came from standing up for the underdog. Some of the people that I did things for didn't deserve it. Very few people are worth saving. Cuss was totally colorblind. His father's best friend was black. When he was in the army, stationed in the South, he had a boxing team. When they traveled, no hotel would take his black fighters, so he slept with them in parks. So that was it for this video. If you watched this video till the end, thank you so much. If you want part 2, let me know in the comments.